Hello everybody, my name is Craig Bennett, and today I'm going to get into a video on beehives, specifically the Langstroth hive. Now, as far as this goes, I'm going to get into some things that you should know about whenever you're first starting out, like what type of supplies you'll be dealing with. But I'm not going to get too deep into any given supply. The reason why is more than less, this is going to be a longer video, and I don't want to overload someone. The fact is it's up to you. If you want to get into this stuff, you need to take responsibility and do your own research into stuff. I'm going to say in other videos on the reasons why and stuff like that, but if you're not willing to put in the actual hard work and research, then this is not for you. Just like in my technology how-to videos, I tell people, if you're going to go into cybersecurity or network engineering or something like that, if you're not willing to put in the research and time and effort into that, then that's not for you. You might want to go for something else, maybe doing flowers or something like that. There's a lot of people who cut grass and don't have to worry about things. So as far as that goes, let's jump on into it. Now, all links be down below, so feel free to check that. But there's a few good sites on this. Now, as far as this goes, there's a pretty good infographic on this, which type of hive is best for you. Notes there's plenty of other type of hives out there, but these are the main ones. I've seen the top bar hive. The one I have is the Langstroth hive, which is what I'm talking about. So that's where I got the most experience into. I never personally mess with the other two hives. But as far as that goes, I've never seen this middle one in person. So I just want to note that there is options out there, and the one I'm going to be talking about in this particular video is the one on the right. You'll find this one, and let's actually look at some actual pictures. So and again, these links will be down below, so feel free to check that out. But basically, the one on the right is what we're going to be talking about. And you'll find these, let's get down to it, you'll find these out in farm fields or major honey industries or some other places. These tend to be the most efficient ones that we know of to date. There might be a better way to keep bees to get more honey, and if you're doing it as a business, that means more money. And that's great and all, but we don't know of it yet, or at least it's not massively used. So I don't know about it. Let's just put it that way. So this is probably what you're going to be end up with if you're going to go into beekeeping. Obviously, again, you got the other type of hives, the top bar. It tends to be somewhat popular and easy to deal with. Then you got this. So as far as that goes, getting into a little bit diagram on showing the parts. Well, basically the diagram here, it doesn't show every last little bit in detail, which I can show from mine, but basically this is what a normal setup for Langstroth hive would be. Now, one thing I want to note is you might see on some of these diagrams, or when you're talking to people, is you might do something where you have a deep hive versus a deep body versus a medium versus a shallow, and you have it stacked. And I personally don't do that. What I do is I have all 8 frame mediums, and basically if you go into lean manufacturing, if you go into quality control, something of this nature, then you'll find out very quickly, not so much for in this case, not so much for the honey producing part of it, but for the individual that will be dealing with it, the beekeeper themselves. You'll find very quickly, if you have all the same size frames, all the same size boxes, all the same size supers, all the same size, it's very easy to do things. Your efficiency goes sky high immediately, versus you end up having to hunt for a medium and all you're finding is deeps, or you having to get the medium frames versus deep frames. You only have to deal with one thing, and you only have to be good at one thing. Whereas having 2, 3, whatever, that means that you got to be good at multiple things, and to seeing multiple things, dealing with multiple things. And that causes problems into itself. The more you into that one single thing that you're dealing with, being the deep or medium, the easier things are going to be for you. Obviously, it's up to you how you want to do it. So it's just something very important to note. Now, as far as we're going to get into the 8 frame, 10 frames, stuff of this nature, just pulling up Wikipedia, it has a pretty good measurement into this stuff. So you can actually see here that you got 8 frame, 10 frame, and 5 frame. The more common that you'll find is the 10 frame and 8 frame, so that's very important to note. What I personally have is the 8 frame medium, and that's the only thing I deal with. In fact, the following is the actual hives I got in my backyard. This picture was taken a while back, but these are the hives I have in the back area. And for those of you who are wondering, setting up beehives and stuff of this nature, as long as it's 25 feet away from where people normally are. So maybe you got some kids in a swing set or something of this nature. And as long as it's 25 feet away from that stuff, or more, preferably more, in this case more is better, the less problems you're going to have. Basically, they get very, very territorial when you get 25 feet or closer. This is very important to note. And another thing to note is they don't like large noise, loud noise. And this is being that it's not a sustained loud noise. It feels like in a highway or New York or something like this. There's people who put beehives on rooftops in New York. That's definitely possible. But the problem is when you have someone cutting grass, that's a loud noise that comes out in the middle of nowhere, and they won't like that. So it's pretty important to note that you either got to lock them up, or you got to you got to deal with it. You got to use a weed or whatever. What we basically do for the people who cuts around there, they know the risk and everything. If you're going to get stung, here's where the ammonia is, type of thing. And ammonia helps with the if you get a bee sting, then basically you need to get the stinger out as quick as possible. After 7 seconds, all the venom's in the system. But you need to put ammonia on the area, and it basically fixes itself. Obviously, it's going to be swelling a little because the venom. And getting the venom out is you can use witch hazel and meat tenderizer and mix it together and put it on the area. And that's an old country thing. And wasp bites and stuff like that, you can that works too. It helps pull the actual venom out. You actually will feel it coming out. So it actually hurts quite a bit. So with that being said, that's something to note if you're going to set up your hive. Just want to add it into here just in case if someone's wondering about that. And you might find that you don't have that ability, so there's no reason to go further into this if that's your only reason why I'd be around here. So as far as that goes, that's something to note. But basically the reason why I'm showing you this given picture is it basically shows that I have the exact same across the board. There might be a little bit differences as far as the hive thin stuff, and this goes into how healthy one hive is versus another, like how strong it is versus another, how much room was needed versus another. That's fairly important to note into itself. Now, as far as that goes, you might be wondering about weight-wise, because here's the thing: is dealing with the frames and stuff. I again deal with 8-frame medium, and basically what that equates to is about 2-3 pounds without honey. So note that these things are not light. I'll get a little bit more into what is a frame and foundation and stuff like that into this particular video. So note that. But it's 2-3 pounds. And then for super, which I'm going to get a little bit more into in a second, the entire super being full of frames and the honey is about 80 pounds. Per frame, expect if it has honey on there between 3 and 10 pounds. So it's pretty important to note that this is not a easy thing for some people to do. If you got some physical disability where you can't pick up things that easily, or something else, then this might not be for you. In fact, you can actually go down to the 5 shallow if you want to go to that. But even note there, it's not. I mean, like you can see the measurements right here, and there's not much of a difference. Yes, it's going to drop the weight by a considerable amount. With that being said, but still, it is very heavy, and it's a repeat of pick up, put down, and move. It's very important to note that. So with that being said, so one thing I want to mention, and this might be confusing to some, is you might see 10, 8. Basically, you can have a super, and what is a super? Going into that. So this box here, so you might notice that we have a box, and basically, I don't have a picture of the actual box itself, but basically, it's that box itself that's a super. So you got a deep super, it means it goes deep, and you can see the actual depth, the actual difference in the depth here. Notice that the deep body for a 5 frame is the same as a 10 frame. The only difference means how many frames it holds. Again, I deal with 8, but you can, I'm not saying it's good to do this. I'm just saying it's possible. You can, if you want to make your own hive out of whatever materials you want, you can theoretically make it 2 frames, 3 frames, theoretically. But in reality, you're probably not going to find great success into it. You can make it more than 10 frames, but you're probably going to run into a major weight problem. Honey is not light. This is going to be very heavy. Very, very important to note that, because it will end up, causing problems if you don't take it serious. So as far as that goes, let's go into the other parts. So let's start with the bottom up. And as far as the bottom goes, this is what they call in here is a stand. What we call is a landing board. Basically what happens is the bees, you don't have to have this is optional. So you notice on here it doesn't even have it, but if you look on some pictures on some hives, they don't even have a landing board. But what a land board tends to be used for is the bees will land on it, and it helps them. It gives a little bit more space to land. They're not as accurate as some people might think. When weighted down with all of the pollen and nectar and stuff, they basically will miss the mark. They can easily miss the mark if you just got a bottom board and that's it. There's not much space on a bottom board for them to hit. But having a landing board, it's worthwhile. It's not that much money or resources if you're making your own, and it's just worthwhile all around. So going up from there, you have a bottom board. I don't have a picture of this on me, but basically a bottom board, it has a screen on the bottom, and this could be metal. Ours is made out of metal, and it does several things. One, it protects the bees from anything going up in it. Second, it allows heating and cooling, because bees, they will have heater bees for the winters. They will keep the humidity down to a certain degree. They will keep the temperature down to a certain degree, or up to a certain degree, depending on the time of year. And basically, that helps is for the summer months. For the winter months, you can actually close it off. In the back there will be a split. You won't see, I can't find a good picture of it. So maybe if I get more into this particular topic, I might actually take a picture of the ones I had, and that way you can actually see what I'm talking about. But there's a slit in the back, and basically what you can do is you can slide a board in there, some CPM board or something else in there, and that will block it. So in the wintertime, you don't have cold air rushing in from the winds and stuff. The other thing is having it out and whatever. Again, it helps with the weather, and also allows things to drop down that's needed. But having it in there, they will drop pollen and on accident, obviously, and they will drop certain things if they got pests in there, like, for example, varroa mites or something else. You'll probably see it on the bottom. So having some type of board in the bottom when you want to inspect them, it's very important, because you can actually take a look at it and then see, oh, is there beetles or what's there, and that'll give you a good indication if there is even any pest at all. Now, with that being said, the you need to keep in mind that it is very useful to keep an eye out on anything that falls there, and that way you know how best to help your bees. Again, as a beekeeper, your job is not to domesticate the animal. Your job is not to basically say, here, go here and get the pollen from this place. You can encourage it, fine, but the fact is that's not really your job. Your job is keeping them alive. That's your really one and only purpose. Obviously, it's added in there, getting honey and stuff of this nature, but your real only job is to keep them alive. It's challenging enough if you don't have information. So that board on the bottom will give you the information. A part of that they don't show as far as being labeled here, but you'll see in the pictures that I have, and I'll show you in a second. It's this little bar right here. So it's pretty important notes that the bar, this is called a restrictor, and basically it's a rectangle bar, and it has these little notches. So taking a look at the ones on that picture I previously showed you, it has a restrictor in there. What a restrictor does is it basically restricts where bees can come in and come out. This does a few things. If you plugged a hole, like you put a restrictor in there, plugged a hole with something like cloth, then you essentially locked up the bees. You essentially are keeping them from going outside. This is actually fairly important if you got a farmer that lives near, or if you know that they're spraying nearby something that might hurt the bees. And it's very important to note this before I forget, is if you are going to take care of bees, it's pretty important to let your state know, and they will tell the local farmers and put you in contact with the local farmers. And when a farmer sprays their field with something that could or will hurt a bee, they basically say, "Oh, we're about to spray this day." And there's actual federal laws protecting beekeepers and bees in itself. So because they're very important for our food source, and farmers, they don't want to screw over the beekeeper because that means extra money or not. The potato weighing 2 pounds versus a pound type of thing. So with that being said, it's a little out there, but it's one thing that you need to note is that if you're going to take care of bees, you need to have that registered, and you need to note that you can use this tool to lock up your bees. Now, as far as on the ones back there, well, basically what you will notice that there is one small notch into there. You don't see the other notch in there. If you turn that restrictor, the other notch will show up. It's just not a good angle to show you both sides of it. So the notch, basically what it does is you have guard bees, and you can use your restrictor for many reasons. Again, weather and stuff of this nature. It's not as prudent, but weather is a possibility as far as that. But then you have a few other things like robbing. So bees are like humans and most other things. If they can rob it, if they can steal it, that's a lot easier than making it yourself. So if they can go into another hive, they find out they can go into another hive and steal their honey, then they'll do it. And that's because it's just a lot easier to do that than to make your own. And what they're saying at the end of the day, yeah, I'm taking your food and you probably won't survive, or you definitely won't. But at the end of the day, I'm worried about my own. Well, that's the thing, is if you got some robbing, maybe your guard bees are weak, or the hive is weak in general, then it restricts the area that the guard bees will have to go after. And if there is massive amount of robbing, there is extra steps you can actually take. So for example, what we found out is you can actually use a frame in the front or something like this, and have a little bit of gap, and basically this is protecting from robbing. The bees will go straight up and straight down. They won't be able to use the landing board for obvious reasons. But what would end up happening is the bees that are robbing, they want to get in and out as quickly as possible, and they don't. I don't know if it's that they're not smart enough. I think they are smart enough, but it might be that, or it might be that the fact that going up and down will just take too long and it's too dangerous. So that might be the case, but in any case, I forgot how this came about, but basically this will stop robbing altogether, from my experience. Reality that might not work for everybody, so I just want to note that solutions from one place may not work for another place, just like in technology. So as far as that goes, that's a tool that is actually used once in a while, some type of restrictor or something else. And this is a very simple thing to make, or it's better yet just to buy it. But it's a very simple thing, and it's very easy to deal with. You just go out there and put a restrictor in, and there you go. And it's fairly good, again, if you're going to do some installation for winter. That's one of the times that I use it is when it's put out there, is when it gets fairly cold. You can put a restrictor in, and what happens is the colder it is, the slower bees move. The more that they have a chance of getting robbed. Maybe not from a narrow bee, but keep in mind you got wasps, you got other things that want that honey, because that means sugar and some other stuff that's in the honey, and they want it. Just like if you put candy outside, and the wasp finds it, they're going to go after it. Well, the fact is the same thing here. Is you don't want other things going in there, and the guard bees will still try to keep guard, but because they're so slow and that having a massive area for them to cover is just going to be problems all around. Just leaving them problems, so to speak. So that's something to note. It's very important to note that. Now, as far as one up there is you have supers. Again, I use what we use out here is medium supers all through and through, whereas this you're going to see deep. So what deep basically means is it just uses the deep frames. As far as why you will want to have a queen excluder at some places, I'm going to get into that in later videos. It's important to note that, because that the supers at the bottom will have stuff that the supers at top won't have. You'll have honey stuff at the top. You'll have brood and stuff. You need to know how to identify brood, how to identify eggs, how to identify the queen itself, stuff of this nature, which I'm going to cover in detail in later videos. But given that this channel takes off. But with that being said, it's just important to note when it says, oh, it's like a brood chamber or something like that. I'm not going to focus on that. I'm just going to focus on supers. Just note supers. It's just basically the part that you put frames in. So you got a it looks like shallow supers up here and a deep super down there, and I think over here we got medium supers, and then I guess deep supers. So deep supers and then a medium up there. Now, as far as that goes, you might notice that this one doesn't have a queen excluder, and this is basically what a queen excluder is. See if I can show you real quick. It looks like this. In fact, I got one that looks something like this. Basically, it's has a spacing big enough for bees, worker bees, foragers to get through, but the queen cannot get through. So if you want to keep the queen contained to a given area, you can. It's not something that you'll go out and get from day one. You could if you want, because the price is not going to be that much up there. But for the most part, it's not something that you need like right now type of thing to run a hive like this. I don't think I've used it really that often. And one thing to note is you need if you go and you're going to buy a queen excluder, look at the reviews. There's some people who complain about their queens are able to get through. So there's things like that where some of them don't work at all. So with that being said, you just need to note that does it even work? So as far as that goes, skipping up, again, we got supers and stuff. We got an inner cover and outer cover. So you'll find this in both areas. And basically it tells you right here, the slots in the inner cover allows bees to escape to a place in the what we tend to use it for is feed. So I don't have a picture of this, but basically what we found is you can have it something like this. What we found to be the best solution if you want to feed the bees is you can take a mason jar and take the lid and poke a bunch of holes into it, small holes, but big enough where sugar water can be licked from the bees itself. You make a sugar water ratio with something like Honeybee Healthy, and what winds up happening is you can put that over that hole, and what happens is the bees will use that to eat. So for example, if pollen is low, or if they're not going out for some reason, or they're not strong, or one of the many reasons why you'll feed them, we found that this tends to be the best method as far as if you want to feed an individual hive. Now, with that being said, is given that they're strong and you don't want to feed them individually, what you can do with a mason jar is take a tiki torch, and basically you can take the tiki torch near the hives, and if you were putting the mason jar over the bee, obviously have the lid portion upside down, so the bees are able to drink from it as it drips or cause it to drip. Well, what ends up happening is if you go ahead and put the mason jar in the tiki torch, the bees will be able to actually eat from it, and it can be from any hive. They'll just go to it and eat, and they'll be calm being together. You might have a feeding frenzy that goes on if it's bad enough, but for the most part, it gets sugar into the system itself. Now, with that being said, this does have the potential to negatively affect the taste of the honey. This is something that mass brand beekeepers do. The ones that you buy in a grocery store, they do this in order to pump out as much honey as possible. The stuff tastes basically like sugar water when you actually taste real honey. Stuff that hadn't really had any sugar water mess with it at all, or very little of it. So that's important to note. Now, as far as that goes, in the wintertime and a few other times, we've used things like candy and sugar. And what we found is if you want to go down this route and feed them candy over winter, maybe they're weak or whatever, or you took a little bit too much honey and didn't really notice it. Well, what ends up happening is if you go ahead and go to any store here in the United States or Europe or most other places that gives candy canes after December time frame for Christmas and the stuff of this nature. Well, what you'll find is they're on a massive discount in January time frame or shortly after Christmas. And basically what you're going to find is you can find these candy canes that are all natural. They don't have any dyes into them or anything like that. They're able to get the coloring like they want based on what's there. So I would advise you to go and look for them. Don't give them anything with actual dyes. See, the problem is with dyes, you don't know if they'll create tumors or some other stuff. Whereas we as humans might be able to withstand it and be. In fact, it's like, think of it like this: chocolate for a dog is toxic. Same thing with grapes and stuff of this nature is toxic for a dog. Whereas us as humans, it's healthy. Whereas like celery for a cat is toxic, but for a dog that's perfectly fine. And I think it's perfectly fine for them, but for us it's definitely perfectly fine unless you have an allergic reaction to it. Well, basically it's a different species, and what's been found out with hummingbird food and a few other things is by having to dye into it that you can buy at any grocery store. Well, that creates tumors or encourages cancer or something of this nature. So you don't want to do that. I can't say for sure it will cause problems, but given the fact that hummingbirds and other species are having problems with it, whereas we will be completely fine, don't risk it. So note that. But as far as this goes, I want to mention before we get to the outer cover is because it's fairly quick, is you might notice a little grate on top and like little things come down that looks like wood, and that's exactly what it is. Well, what's been found out is if you go in some place that's cold or that can get cold, bees can die fairly easily from temperature swings. And these temperature swings are caused within the hive itself. So what happens in a hive is anyone who understands thermodynamics or has any basic understanding of physics and water, well, what happens is the moisture inside a hive will condense towards the top of the hive. It will drip down, and as it's chilled down. Now, the trick is how do you keep it from chilling down too much? Because it's going to go drip down no matter what. But how do you keep it from one? How do you keep it from dripping down at all? But less being, how do you keep it from dripping down being chilled? Because what happens is as the condensed water in here inside the hive, the how the hive is humid and it just condenses at the top to create the water droplets that fall down. The hive itself in the winter, it can, if you actually measure it, it'll measure. I've seen it in the 80s, 90 degree type of stuff, 70s, 70, 80, 90 degree, depending on where you put the thermometer. But basically, you're going from, say, a 80, 90 degree temperature to a water droplet that hits the bee all over its entire body that's in the 60, 65 degree area, or even colder than that. So with that being said, is what some people have found is you can take the very top area above the inner cover and you can put another super above there. You can put you can basically tack some wireframe under the bottom and put cedar shavings all in it, fill it all the way up with cedar shavings. And what this does is it basically makes it where the roof of it has a insulation factor, just kind of like your roof. You might most likely have insulation within your roof. Well, the same effect applies, is the heat loss in the wintertime will be towards going up to the top. And because heat rises, and basically what ends up happening here is by having that insulation factor is it keeps the water droplets from being that 60 degree or 65 degree type of range, which means that your bees will have an extremely higher chance of surviving the winter. And that's very important to itself, because again, if you go out to most wells and stuff like that, say if it's 90 degrees outside and the well is 100, 200 feet in the ground, and the water that's coming out of it is most likely, unless it's near a hot spring or something of this nature, it's most likely going to be coming out of the ground 50 degrees or 60 degrees. Well, if that hits you and it's 100 degrees outside or 90 degrees outside or even 80 degrees outside, your body will go into shock. There is no ifs, ands, or buts on that. your body will go into shock. Now, how bad it will be is depending on how much you got covered and how much you got a temperature switch from a 80, 90 degree to instant 50, 60, whatever that's coming out of well. Well, the same thing is happening with the bees, and keep in mind the size of them versus the water droplets. So it basically covers their entire body, and it's almost an instantaneous death because their body just goes into shock, and it causes problems with that. That's very important. Very important. You don't want bees to die if they don't have to. The fact is as a beekeeper, again, your single basic job, your main job, is to make sure they stay alive. Simple as that. And well, by you not taking care of that problem, you're not doing your job, or at least you're not doing your job as effectively as you should be. You not knowing about the problem is one thing, but now that you know about it, well, try to take care of it. One thing that we do on top of that is on each one of those racks, with the hives, you got racks, is there's, I think this picture was taken before then, there's electricity going out to it. And I see the electric pipe right there. But basically, I think it's in Russia, they use these little heater pads that you put into a hive. And whereas here as humans, we prefer to have our heaters go in the 70, 80, 90 degrees coming out, and it basically heats up the area, that large room area. Well, a hive doesn't have as much room, so you don't need to have it as hot. Again, you have the reverse effect where their body will go in shock if you do something like that. You basically cook them. But what the heaters do is, if you set it up right, you're basically looking at if it gets below, I don't know, say 60 degrees, the heater will automatically kick on until it gets, say, up to 70 degrees. And basically it keeps that chill knocked off. Again, keeping your bees from dying. And this actually helps out with honey production. You can actually take off more. If you do some of these tips, you can take off more honey than what you're really supposed to, and you can actually have better results far beyond what the average person will get. So there's little tricks like that if you actually know about technology like that, and if you use common sense, because you use insulation in your ceiling. You might not exactly know why to start out with, but just use basic common sense and know that that's their house. Okay, you got insulation in the ceiling, why not them? You can step it up and do insulation in the walls. Some people do that. Some people do insulation all around, do styrofoam insulation all around for winter times. I don't advise it unless if you're in a very cold area. I know in the UK they do stuff like that because it gets extremely cold up there in Michigan and stuff like that. You might see pictures of that, but here in North Carolina and many places south of that, you don't really see any of that at all. It's like down in Florida where there's no insulation at all on the walls at all, but it's all in the ceiling. Same thing here. It's it depends on the location if you're going to go that route or not. But even like in Florida, where it's literally a tropical zone, it has insulation in the ceiling. That should tell you something. Even tropical areas, Mexico included, you have insulation in the ceiling, given that it's a proper house. So it's something to note with that. That's just something to note right there. Oh, and as far as the outer cover, it's just that little top piece right there. There's, as you're able to see from that diagram, It's you can see we're talking about there's a slot and stuff of this nature. That's all in theory. I haven't really seen any actual evidence of that. There's back and forth on that. But the inner and outer cover is useful. It's been very useful for feeding and stuff like that. If you want to just keep the feeding, because keep in mind, all of the hives will have guard bees. So basically, if you want to feed just that one hive, what would end up happening is a bee will have to pass a guard just to get to the food. So if you just want to feed that one hive, then you can use that area to do it. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to. So that's just something to note into itself. And you might notice that there's bricks on top, and that's just so wind doesn't kick off the outer cover. What some people do, and you'll find this more than not, it's best to buy bricks or something like that. Something that's very, very the same for this portion, or you can just use stones or something like that. But what some people do is they will go ahead and have a bricks and lay it down one way, and that means that the last time they checked there was a queen there, and or eggs. And then you lay it down the other way, and it means no, there wasn't no queen there, or at least you couldn't find a queen or eggs in the hive last time you checked. Or you can lay it in a different way. It means these are the hives that are suspected to be infested. So it's just something to note into that. So that's something pretty important into itself. Now, as far as that goes, get into the frames and the foundation and stuff in this video. Oh, and before I forget, one thing I want to mention is the racks. So the racks itself, you can make it whatever size you want. What we did with ours is what you see is what you get, but the part to note is they're used to keep the actual hives off the ground. They're used to keep ants and stuff like that away from the hive as best as possible. What's said is if you actually have a string, like maybe some string attached to one of the hives, and it's on the ground, like connecting from the hive to the ground, ants will go up that string to get to the honey. They'll do whatever they can to get to the honey, which means problems. You don't want to stress out the bees. You want as much honey as possible, so you want to have them as stress-free as possible. Another thing is the buckets on the bottom. That's actually a big thing. The buckets on the bottom, you can fill it up with oil or something else. I would not advise water itself because one, the thing is water. It mosquitoes is a big thing, but ants can still get through. You want to put something in there like motor oil or something in there that ants won't go through and that mosquitoes don't want to touch. You don't have to worry about the bees itself. You don't have to worry about any of this other stuff. You just basically need to have something in there. I'm not telling you to put motor oil in there. Hint with that, with the EPA and whatnot. But I'm also going to say put something in there. I'm going to tell you to put something environmentally friendly, but let's just say put something in there that will keep ants and other stuff away. You don't have to worry about bees with it unless if it's like a real toxic where fumes and stuff of this nature. Then you probably have to worry about something like that. But generally, if you can breathe around it, it tends not to be a problem because the bees won't go into itself. That's just something to note. If it's watered, then bees will actually go to it. Even if you take water and you want to avoid this mosquitoes problem by doing chlorination tabs, that's even more reason for the bee to go to it. For some weird reason, bees like to go to nasty water before to go to a clean water source. And chlorine, for some reason, they are attracted to like pool water where it has chlorine in it before to go to a clean water source again. I don't know what that's about, but that's just something they got to know. I don't know if there's any actual scientific reason for that, so I can't find why. And if you do know, then let me know down below. But with that being said, use something like that to keep the ants and other bugs from going up and trying to get into the hives. You might be wondering about stuff like snakes and some other things. They tend to stay away from bees all entirely. We got martin houses, and martins will tend to stay away from bees. The bees will even chase the martins away. So just note that. But if you're worried about snakes and stuff, that will help massively into itself. And same thing with rodents and stuff like that. That will help keep them away, as far as having something in the bucket that has something nasty that ants don't want to go through. So as far as that goes, let's jump into this last little bit. So as far as the frame itself, it's simply this. This is just a random picture I found off of Google, but the ones we tend to use here is wood, pure wood. It's the actual, it's just a frame. It's like a frame of a house. So just note that it's just a frame. And this, I'll show you some pictures in a second too, what would end up happening with them. But then we got foundation. I think this is a wax. It looks like it's wax. It might be plastic, but we tend to use wax. Some people, they don't put foundations into their hives at all. They put the frames in there, but they won't put foundations. This causes problems. One of the biggest is it takes a lot of resources and a lot of energy to make the foundations. Basically, you don't want those bees down. You want them every second they can be out there doing whatever they can to get the honey, to pollinate, to do all of that type of good stuff. The more time they got to build those foundations, which it takes a long time, the worse off you're going to be. Then on top of that is it takes resources away from your honey and other products. So that's fairly important to note, that the foundations will help on that. We use wax. It's cheap, but wax is pretty good to use. One of the biggest reasons is plastic. You can run into cleanliness problems and stuff like that. I'll get a little bit more into materials that you can use. Then you got, again, the queen excluder. I basically covered that. So that could be made out of metal or plastic or whatever. You probably won't be using it at all if ever. You might be able to use it once in a blue moon, so it's worthwhile to have around. But I wouldn't have this in high quality versus, frames. Obviously, you would need having high quality. Then we have a Hive Tool. So the one, this again, just a random picture off of Google. All of these are Hive Tools. The one that looks the closest to the one I have is the one on the right. I can't really tell the difference between one on the right and this blue one. But as far as that goes, basically it's like a crowbar in a sense. So what you have on hives is propolis. So what is propolis? Basically, propolis is, I think it's tree resin. The bees goes out, they go and get tree resin. That's what people think it is. And they come back, and any gaps in the hive, or if they go in a tree stump to build their hive, any gaps, any cracking, any problems, they use propolis. It's basically glue. Now, this glue is very strong. You ain't going to be able to crack it once it's hardened without a tool. And it takes a tool like this, so some mini crowbar, so to speak. Now, the biggest thing to note with this is the propolis is going to be on the frames, the edges of the frame connecting to the super. The propolis is going to be between the one super and the other. The amount varies if the bees feel like it's needed. Like, for example, if there is a little tiny gap, they'll try to fill it up. I'll get a little bit more into propolis and stuff of this nature in a later video. But if they feel like that it needs to be filled up, they'll fill it up with propolis. It's great and all, so they take care of their own house. The problem is when they you need to get into it for whatever reason. Well, the problem is how are you going to get into it without ripping out your nails, literally trying to get the thing apart and still or failing at it, or without a tool. You got to use a tool like this. So as far as that goes, that's just checking real quick. That's pretty much about it. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention. So you can make the frame and most everything else out of pretty much any material you want. The frame and the supers and all that stuff, some people make it out of plastic, some make it out of styrofoam, some make it out of like wood, like my stuff. But as far as things goes, the most common that you'll find is wood. It has nothing to do with cost. Like, yes, tends to be cheaper, but the problem is plastic. It has a tendency to mildewing. Anything like that has a tendency of mildewing. And then you got styrofoam, which there's been linkage between styrofoam hives or styrofoam hive products like frames that are something else, and the bees getting sick or dying, just outright dying. I think it has something to do with the toxics within the styrofoam, and that goes into the bees' food and source, since they use their mouth for pretty much everything. I mean, if you got to put your mouth on everything, you got to put your tongue on everything to do anything. You're probably going to end up picking up some of those toxins, and well, that will get you sick and possibly cause you to die. Well, same thing with the bees. And that's a big thing you got to realize with the materials. I prefer to use pure wood and wax. So wax for the foundation and wood for the frames, the supers, and all the other stuff. And obviously you can put like metal top on, whatever. But as far as that goes, if you choose to use whatever, that's up on you. Just do your basic research and figuring out the differences in case you want to use a particular product. One of the things that you'll probably hear a lot is like, oh, plastic, you can reuse it and stuff of this nature. But cleanliness is the problem for plastic. Okay, at first it's all right, but then you got, because again, with the moisture and the humidity, just straight humidity inside of the hive itself, and then you got other problems within the hive. This has a huge potential for mildew, even though one beekeeper might never seen mildew in their hive. If anyone who's played and has an actual background in plastics or who has a study in plastics either in school or on the industry field, you'll know that has a higher tendency of having a mildew problem versus straight wood itself, if the wood is properly taken care of, which the bees will do, because wild bees go to trees. Plastic trees don't grow in the woods, and they're more adapt physically for wood. But anyways, as far as the wood goes, I wouldn't go with anything with chemicals in it. Again, same problem with the styrofoam. So try to make sure that it's just pine or cedar or something, but just make sure it doesn't have like some chemicals in it for termites or something else, because that's going to go in honey, or that has a high potential of killing off some bees if it's bad for them. But anyways, if you got any questions, anything else? One last thing I'll mention before we head off here is the beehives. Make sure that they're facing east. East is where the sun goes up. As soon as the sun goes through the crack, they will work all the way up to nighttime. And it's fairly important to note, because bees, I'll get more into this in a later video, but they basically have light sensors on their body. During the morning, whenever they detect lights, they know it's time to go out, it's time to do their job, and they start their own activity. I'll get more into that in later videos, but given that this becomes successful as far as the channel and the videos goes. But with that being said, if you have them faced west, then obviously they're not going to see the morning sun, so it's going to be much later in the day. This will cut days and weeks off of a full year of harvesting. This means that they're not out actually doing their job as often as it should, and that's something that you don't want as a beekeeper. That's bad for them. That's actually very bad for them. Their main purpose is taking care of their hive and make sure they can get enough food. Well, you can easily make it where they can't by having their stuff in the wrong positions. Now, with the sun changing from, a little bit more north or south as far as the time of year, and depending on where you are on Earth, you basically figure out the middle ground, and so just go with direct east if possible, given that you're on most places on Earth where the sun won't rise at a weird angle like North Pole. Well, basically, just make sure that it's directly east, and no matter what, as long as they see that first sun, they go out. That's also something to note. If you got a fence, or if you have a building or something that might block them, that will possibly slow down as far as the honey production and stuff like that. So basically, if it's dark, if it's real dark, they're not going to be out flying because they think it's nighttime, and it's time to protect their hive. It's time when problematic animals are out that want their honey. So basically, it's one thing that you got to keep in mind is make sure that they can see the morning sun. So as far as that goes, if you got any questions, anything else, feel free to leave them down below, or feel free to email me them. The email will be in the about section. And feel free to leave a like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next video. Hope you have a great day. Oh, and real quick, if you're watching this on my main channel, feel free to check out the new channel. And if you're wanting to watch, if you're on the new channel, then feel free to check out the main channel for technology how-tos. But anyways,